So you talk about seduction or appeal in people's
What was the
interaction.
first word you used?
Seduction.
That's what I thought you said. I wasn't sure whether it was deduction or seduction.
Seduction.
Yes, appeals. Go ahead. Finish
It's
the
like
question.
magnetizing things or a dynamic. I notice a lot of people study it in terms of like different styles that humans have or archetypes
Yes.
or like the Enneagram. I
Yes.
was just very curious. I see some of the younger generation like really using it in a charming way,
Yes.
and then I see some of the older generation using it in what I would think is a manipulative way.
Yes.
And I think it's a tool, but I don't really understand it.
Yes. That's a lovely conversation, truly. And the reason that we see a difference between the young people and the elder people is that the young people are trying on hats. And they're still fluid with it. You know, they might say, well, I am a this, or this is what composes my sense of self, but if they don't feel that it's big enough for them, they'll cast it out. And so they're not stuck with an archetype. Whereas the longer we've hung out on this planet, the more we identify with an archetype. And the trouble with that is that we then will die for that, so to speak, whether that's on a verbal level or an emotional level or on some other kind of level. We will stake ourselves into what we think is true or benefits us, and the rest of the world can whatever. And that's how it becomes seduction, and seduction turns into manipulation. Manipulation is always sourced in, I have to get mine or I won't survive. And so there's one thing to be charming and say, join me. Look at me, I'm successful. If we get together, everything will be fine. And putting a force into play that brings about fear or takes away really someone's desire to join you, and they join you for all the wrong purposes. So seduction and manipulation are not isolated in one arena. The person who is seducing plays a part, and the one that's being seduced is playing the other part. In other words, they fit together. There's a karmic or spiritual energy that occurs, and that's why it's very important to understand that people are always saying, well, somebody bullied me into something, or I was forced into it in some way. No, we are never. Those are always spiritual contracts and vows that we engage in. We may have an intuitive sense. If I try on this thing, I'm this archetype because you're that archetype, or I want you to like me, so I will join you there. That's the buying and selling that I was talking about earlier, the business of life. And whenever we engage in that, both parties are engaging. There are no victims in relationship to that. And so where does manipulation or attraction or magnetism begin and end? You know, it's really like a Mobius strip. There is only one side to it. It's always interconnected. What's interesting about it is again, as you were mentioning, how we're using that. Do we want to be seduced? Usually we do. We want to be convinced. We want to be chosen. We want to be included. So we will give up our own conversations in order to belong. And that allows us to open up to those kinds of, oh, you were this and I'm the same. So any of those ways that we look at the elements inside us and outside us and define ourselves, whether it's an astrological conversation or it's an archetypical conversation or an emotional or a cultural conversation, or if it's a numerological conversation, any way that we say, here's the pattern, do we fit this pattern, always is how we see it. It's the same way that we do statistics, you know. You can make statistics bend in any way you choose. You can pull out that element. So you can say, well, you are this in an anagram, or you are that in an astrological thing, and bend it so that it becomes the focal point of identification. And I would love if we could see, if we could smile at all of the external elements that bend us in any direction and see them as a part of our history. See them as something that we've collected so that we can decide whether we keep them or not. You know, we can take, for example, the fact that Indian tribes have always had clans. They've always said, I'm a turtle clan, or the eagle clan, or the snake clan, and they have held that identification. In former times, that lasted your life. In today's terms, you may be the archetype of a feminine quality, a goddess, or a male warrior, and that may go on simultaneously or one rapid fire after the other, because in the end we have all potential, and you can squeeze yourself into any design, into any matrix that pleases you. We can find anything true, we can bring anything to the format if it convinces us that it will make us successful, it will make us honorable, it will make us more powerful, it will make us more appealing to the outside world. So my higher self would say, release them all. Release them all and not engage in that compartmentalizing energy. I am this, because the moment you say I am this, somebody is the opposite of you. And that limits how you do the business of life. It limits who you seduce, who you bring to you, how much play you have. And this is a global arena. This is a cosmic arena. This is a time of expanding and finding what it is in each person that you can link up with without having to give up the self. In other words, the person may say, well, I fit into this pattern or matrix. And you'll be able to find a place where you can fit in that too. But you want to look and see why you want to. You know, is it just a mask that you layer on yourself for survival purposes, for the dig down into the center core, and is it fear and is it survival? Or is it the joy of amplification? Let me try this on. Yes, a part of me is that. My higher self always says, if you see a war outside you, look at the war within you. If you see a great and creative person outside you, look and find the great and creative person within you. But release your labels, because we are hovering over a precipice that will expand and explode all of those ways of defining ourselves, because we are opening up to a cosmic energy coming into this planet that is about to change everything we think is true. And so all of the patterns that we've had that said, well, I am this, and or I am that, are going to lose their power over us. And so, of course, in order to not be set adrift, it's time for us to begin to reinvent who we are outside of all of those archetypical, sociological, psychogenetic, any of those kinds of conversations outside us, and begin to discern who it is that we want to manifest within us, that allows us to actually express in a fluid way the fabric of our own essence. And I don't use the word truth here, because your truth will change, and at this moment, quite rapidly. So it's really time to feel the freedom of amplifying and discerning and tossing away and taking on energies that will allow you to reinvent yourself, but in such a way that that's a part of your evolution, that it is fluid, that it doesn't just put you in a new box. You know, oh, I've discovered that, in fact, I am this way. You know, this has been true since the beginning of time. If you want to look at the very early forms of healing, or society qualification or your pecking order anywhere, you'll find this. Ayurvedic medicine, astrology, form of body. Name it, there will be, you are this, but you're not that. When in effect, we are all things. Which ones do we choose? Which ones nourish us? Which ones open the gateway for our evolution? Because the moment you close the door and say, I'm this archetype, you have just lessened the possibilities that you have to wield yourself. So it's never about who anybody else is seducing, but it's about the laughter and the giggle of recognizing how we do that. We have the right to do it, you know, but we get very self-righteous about our right to do it. You know, I'm doing this for the good of the whole. I'm doing this because this is what's good for you. No, we're always doing it for ourselves. And this was something I learned in the Peace Corps. If you cannot find yourself there, if you do not recognize that it's about you in that way, then you will never be able to give to the whole. And so if we can drop the shield of self-righteousness, then we can really explore the gifts that we have. And we can recognize that there is a magnetism. These elements are typical elements, enneagrams, astrological points of reference, cultural points of reference. All of those points of reference have validity, of course. But are they also not that which constricts us? And so this is not the time of constriction. So we are allowed to use the seduction to say, this is who I am, and of course you like me, and of course you want to be with me. Of course. We have that right. But as soon as we begin to fabricate who we are, we have created a wiggle there that takes us from the essence to the doing, to the performance. And there's a price to pay for that. And so let us use our natural magnetism. You know, if you look at any person in your life that you admire and you say, well, this person has a great sense of humor, this person's really intelligent, or this person has a charisma, then we want to find that inside ourselves so that we engage or we relate to those people or those situations from that place of equality, from that place of recognizing what you have. How could you recognize it if you didn't have a frame of reference for it? So it's a time of completely reinitiating how we engage, how we use magnetism, not as a manipulation, but as something that belongs to us to wield. And of course, again, to tie this up, you're only going to attract those that belong to that anyway. You won't attract the others. That's the cosmic giver. Thank you.